Recently, I've been wanting to challenge myself to something kind of absurd. Something that would push my limits in gaming and truly test if I actually have the balls to impress myself and most women. That's when I landed on F1 23, the newest and greatest attempt from EA and the FIA to try and rope teenagers into going 200 miles per hour down your local neighborhood street like this is the GTA 5 RP server. Either that or literally anything related to Roblox. And after learning that the Las Vegas Grand Prix was in the track list, I knew what I needed to do. It was time to see if I could set the bar higher than ever before and prove to the people of my hometown that I'm actually worth something. So strap in and buckle up, because it's time to blast down the Vegas Strip at 200 miles per hour like this is a scene ripped straight from the Gotta Go Fast saga, as I make my attempt to answer the question that I've been asking since the Vegas Grand Prix took place back in November. Can I become #1 at F1 Las Vegas? Maybe. However, I'm adding some restrictions, because this would be a pretty lame video if I didn't make this more challenging. This includes using a controller and not a sim setup, having never played an F1 game before, and I only gave myself 12 hours to do it. What? Will I survive? Probably not, but at least I got some hot babes by doing this, right? This is F1 23, and my challenge to be the best at the Las Vegas Grand Prix in only 12 hours. Before we hop into the 12 hours of choke and ball torture, let me explain this entire video and how this will all be laid out. This is F1 23, the newest Formula 1 game on the market, and, I think, the only game to feature the beautiful and fabulous Las Vegas Grand Prix. Clocking in at a whopping 3.9 miles long with 17 corners, this track has a trio of straights as well as some tight corners to make for some intense racing. So what better way to race it than by going for the fastest lap possible? Let me provide all of the setup for how I'm going to do this. That way you're not super confused midway through the video and begin to question why this guy may actually be good at a video game. I'm playing the game at max settings, not that it matters, and I'm using the time trials mode in F1 World for my run. This will allow me to not have to worry about other drivers. It'll just be me and the track and many intrusive thoughts, like how you should subscribe. Otherwise I'm gonna sneak into your bedroom and tickle you with a feather. Only a guy's room though. I don't have permission to enter a girl's room yet. And yes, I'm using a controller for this entire video. Using a proper sim setup would be better, but I'm not spending several $100s for a video like this. Plus, it's just a bigger challenge for me. This challenge officially started at 12 in the morning on February 1st, and would end at 12 in the morning on February 3rd, and would only count time spent in-game. In this case, the raw recording time. This is because with work and other priorities, setting a full 2 days aside for this challenge made the most sense. If you complain at me, then you're cringe. So let's get into day 1 and talk about how I slowly but surely would get a lap that would rival even the best Formula 1 drivers, as well as go insane for hearing a roaring V6 in my ears for several hours. The Las Vegas Grand Prix circuit is a pretty strange circuit. Filled with loads of hard and fast corners as well as 3 long straights, this track is going to help you explain what the birds and the bees are from a car's POV. Yeah. And as you might be able to tell, this track loves to trick any and all drivers that dare to drive it, both by what way they should tackle the corners and having to forcefully stare at the dazzling lights of the city that never sleeps. Going into day 1, I didn't watch any videos or guides. I simply booted up the game, went straight to time trials, picked a car, and started putting down laps. My main goal was to get a feel for the track, both from a feel and a looks perspective. I wanted to get a feel for the car as well, to know how much throttle I could take through certain corners, how much over or understeer I'd experience, these sorts of things. It's in doing so that most of my early laps were not super quick, but then again, given that I've played Forza games for like 10 years, I generally knew how to play like a real driver, at least when I wanted to. Sorry that I ruined your thought of me being a literal 5-year-old driving $1 million car into a tree and having a skill issue, as if I'm Nicky Poo himself. For day 1, I'm not going to focus too much on explaining the track, but I will talk about some of the frustrations that I have whilst putting down laps. The first major one is the chicane-esque portion of the track, that being turns 6 through 9 near the sphere. This section is really tight. The braking zones are super easy to miss, and simply hitting your front wheels on one curb is enough to send the car into a wall or off the track. This is by far the biggest choke point on this track, and it's one of the highest places I've had to reset on over and over again. Now, that might be because I'm trying to stare at the sphere whilst racing, but hey, cut me some slack, okay? Those screens are really bright though, so you may want to put some sunshades on. They're also perfect for showing my anime waifu on, reminding me that yes, I'm still maidenless. The second frustration is actually the first 2 turns of the track. It's a rather strange turn-in that reminds me of how I turned into an incel 8 years ago. I got the hang of it after a while, but it's still a bit blind and can screw with you if you're not careful. My first completed lap was a 1:35.7, a pretty decent start for only doing 4 laps so far. However, there were quite a few places that I can improve upon, so I focused on doing that over the next few laps. It was then listening to the car whilst doing this that I missed the V10s that older F1 cars once had. Who didn't want to have their ears bleed at the sounds of what basically is a Lexus LFA roaring past them? Let's be frank, it's either that or your girlfriend instead, but at least your girlfriend is cute. The car ain't so much. Most of my lap times were invalid, and therefore, most of them didn't count. Thanks, FIA. I'll be at your doorstep tomorrow to have an adult chat. I eventually realized that I needed to stop corner cutting, but hey, don't yell at me for corner cutting, okay? Then I got an invalid lap a second and third time, and again, and again, and again, until I finally got a real lap in with a new PB, a 1:34.8, and officially became part of the top 100K club. I had had enough with daytime Vegas, so I switched to what was the correct version, midnight cold, and kept doing laps. Nothing much would happen for a good while, apart from staring at the sights of my hometown and the fabulous Las Vegas Strip. It kinda gave me a sense of joy, knowing that this is a real track in a real video game. That's not to say that this is a first though, as Vegas did have an F1 race of its own back in the 80s, but this is something else, and it feels surreal to see this in a video game. I broke my record soon after with a 1:34.5. I started recording early in the afternoon by this point, but due to something known only as my job, I had to stop for now. No new records would be broken after my 1:34.5 earlier in the day, so I wrapped recording and went to work. Boy did I love making burritos to slap people with. We don't talk about them. And after playing some Tears of the Kingdom and returning home 7 hours later, I kicked off the remainder of day 1 by getting a 1:33.7. Now, this lap was invalidated, but hey, that still goes to show that I'm fast, okay? By this point though, I had figured out the track pretty well and was doing a fairly good job of nailing most of the corners. I got a 1:33.6 on my next lap and continued to make it my goal to stay on track and stop hopping around like I was high on crack. My inner Forza Horizon was starting to lash out, but I needed to kill it for once. But finally, I did get a new PB, a 1:34.1. And after this new PB, I continuously kept banging in 1:33s nearly every lap, but all of them were invalidated laps. I knew how fast I was capable of being. No, not in that sense, Isuko. I just needed to tell myself that the track limits had cooties and that I couldn't touch them. But finally, after around 10 more laps, I finally got a new PB and broke the 1:33 barrier with a 1:33.9. But as you'll see later in the video, this is far from the last time we'll see an incredible PB. 3 laps later, another new PB, this time a 1:33.444. Cool number. We've made it into the top 50K on the leaderboards. Let us rejoice that 50,000 people are better than me, but in reality, that number is everyone in the entire human race. Another half hour of putting laps in would go by, and I would eventually get a slightly better PB, a 1:33.337. So many lucky numbers, that's gotta mean something. Nope. Right? A few laps later, another massive PB would happen. I'd be 0.3 seconds up and get a 1:33.02. That 1:32 is so close I can taste it. And it wouldn't take long to get, yes, a 1:32.8 in the top 30K. There would then be a slow period of around 2 hours before I finally set a new PB. At this point, my time was now good enough to where minor improvements were now major ones. I was struggling with some corners, most notably the Sphere Chicane and the entry and exit from the Las Vegas Strip straight. Even then, my new PB wasn't that massive, with it being a 1:32.7. For the remainder of day 1, I didn't get a new PB. It was now down to minor improvements and changes if I wanted to get one. So after a few hours of coming home, I packed up for the night and went to bed, hoping that tomorrow I can get a better PB and improve on track. I gotta impress the girls around me somehow, so being fast on a virtual racetrack should do the trick. It's now the second and last day of the challenge, February 2nd. I was scheduled a 9-hour shift today and woke up at 9 a.m. Let's just say your boy wasn't doing so great. I did get about 20 minutes of laps in before I went to work, which translated to 11 laps. The only thing of note here was that I was able to get an invalidated lap of 1:32.5. At least it proved that I could go faster. I just needed to tighten up my game. Regardless, I went to work that day, and on my break, I decided to look up some YouTube videos regarding the track. I wanted to see what other players were doing for their laps and try some of their tech out when I got home. I do want to explain how this track is meant to be driven and talk about some of the more technical areas of this track. Coming into turns 1 and 2, you want to hug the right wall as much as you can, as you want to begin downshifting to 4th gear. Try and hold your speed through the corner and try to hug the inside as much as you can. Send it out of the corner into turn 3. Try to hug the wall here on the right side, but do be careful, as you can hit this wall and bounce off to the outside, losing a large amount of time. Slowly put down the throttle out of turn 4, and it's onto the hard right-hander of turn 5. Shift down to either 3rd or 4th for this corner, turn in and try to put the car over this bump, or simply have your right tire touch it briefly. Swing to the left wall and hug it heading onto this corner and heading towards the sphere chicane with turn 6. This corner can really mess you up, but you got 2 options of how to tackle it. Starting from turn 5 on the left wall, you can then head towards the right wall and stay there, and come into turn 7 on the outside line. Or you can stay on the left wall the entire time and hug it and come in from the inside. Personally, I like the outside line better, as it's easier to see the corner coming, allowing you to have more time to brake and turn into the corner. And that's going to be important, as you're going to be turning into turn 7 and then straight into turn 8. This corner can be a big challenge to overcome, with me myself resetting around 100 times just on this turn alone. Swing to the right side wall coming out of turn 8 and hug the left wall as much as you can coming into turn 9 without hitting this curb. From there, it's time to send it through turns 10 and 11. And as you start coming around turn 11, swing towards the right wall and be ready to brake really hard. Be careful when driving on this curb, as you can skip it if you drive over it just right. For me, I choose to simply let my left tire touch the edge of it a little bit. Make sure you shift down to 3rd for this turn and brake early if you need. Once you're past turn 12, it's time to put the pedal down as you blaze down Las Vegas Boulevard, heading towards turn 14. This turn can be pretty tricky to master. You're going to want to shift down to 3rd and briefly let your left tire touch this curb. Make sure the car goes over this bump to save some time and hug this wall on the left as much as you can. After that, you can make your final send towards the start-finish line. That's a lap of the Vegas circuit in a nutshell, and this is the strategy that I'm now using for the remainder of day 2. And so, after starting at 9 p.m. that night, I only had 3 hours to make something happen. So let's get cracking. For the first 30 minutes, I improved my time by around 0.8 seconds. It was becoming harder and harder to save any time, as everything was down to small adjustments and improvements. Every time I thought I had something going, it would fall apart in a single turn. But roughly an hour in, I got my first major PB of the day, a 132.3. And sadly, this is the part of the video that's gonna be rather short, because it only took about an hour and a half after this for me to get what would be my final PB of the challenge. I did keep trying for a little while longer after I got this PB to try and improve it, but I just couldn't do it. This is probably my limit of what I can do with a controller and my 20-year-old brain rot. So this is my fastest time on the Las Vegas Grand Prix, a 132.103. Enjoy the lap. With that, the challenge was officially over, my fastest lap being a 1:32.103, sitting in the top 10,000 in the world, more specifically at number 8,645th on the global leaderboards. It's an impressive feat for someone who has never played a Formula 1 game, has never driven the track, who's playing on a controller, and only played the game for realistically around 9 hours out of the 12 that I had given myself. I'm incredibly happy that I actually beat all of the IRL drivers who had raced on this track in real life by several seconds. Yes, ladies, your boy is faster than a real F1 driver. I'll give you an autograph later. I'm pretty satisfied with how this went, and I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you want to see more videos like this, consider liking this video and commenting on what games I should try this format on next. Anyways, I'm gonna go see if the babes in pit lane want a selfie, so I'ma head out. My name is PandaPowerSauce, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.